mean, Bianca was, well, she was a beautiful girl, and she was passionate about life. She lived well beyond her years. She constantly told us all in the family that she was an adult, a grown-up, and she was driven. She loved student council, and she wanted to like be a mentor and leader to friends and people around her. So that was like her biggest reason when COVID ended to go back to school. Is actually when she was a freshman, she was so excited that in middle school she got selected to be in student council, and then COVID happened and she was devastated, and she got to go back to school. It was all about student council, and she was just a firecracker. And I mean, when she was little, we called her Princess because she was a princess. I mean, I nicknamed her Princess, and she lived her life like a real fairy tale princess, and walked around like she owned the world and told her older siblings what to do for her to clean her room and all of that. But later in life, she just was like a firecracker. Like, she argued with everybody about everything, and was all about women's rights this year, and all about, you know, any minority class or anything that she could be passionate about, and she would just argue that point forever. But with the people in her life, she just seemed to be that girl that cared, and when someone was struggling, she would be their friend. She would help them and let them know that,
That's okay.
that they weren't alone. You know, her best friend had called my ex-wife and told her that there was an accident, and she called me, said that Bianca was going to the hospital in an ambulance to OHSU, and I work at OHSU off and on in other hospitals, so I called and she didn't show up, and you never dream of losing a child, and you never want to go through that. And I knew in that moment that it didn't really matter necessarily what happened, but that she was gone. When I was out at the crash site, a couple of kids just came flying by in their cars, and they feel like it's like a race course out there. The last thing I want is for the other kids involved in this to, for anything bad to happen to them, or for them. I mean, they have to live with this for the rest of their life. But, you know, unfortunately for Bianca, she was seated in the position of the point of impact in the car. And I mean, I think Bianca will have her own legacy in life. She's, and it was only 16 and a half years, but she made an impact. And there's a lot of people here that know that, not just her family and close friends, but she was an absolutely beautiful girl with, you know, a passion about life, and she had her struggles. She's in a better place. We know that, and, you know, I think for her memory, I just want people to remember her for who she was and the good she did and the people she loved.
They advise parents to remind their teenage drivers who maybe just got their license or planning on going out on the road this summer to stay focused, stay sober, and stay under the speed limit.
A sea of purple at Oregon City High School today.
In my third period, a girl came in crying.
Students say purple was Bianca's favorite color. Many were mourning their peer who passed away suddenly last Friday.
So they're white shirts with black lettering. I think it was like the ones at Joann's, and they're like puffy a little bit. They say live for B.
Police say they believe the driver of the car Bianca was in crossed the center line of the road and ran into a truck. ODOT is reminding all drivers of any age to be careful.
We also see an alarming trend across the country, not just with teen drivers, but with overall crashes, serious injuries, and fatalities going up in the past couple of years. Going into not only the busy time of year for holidays, this coming Memorial Day weekend, important to remember all ages, don't drink, drive sober, buckle up.
And the COVID-19 pandemic may have altered some drivers' habits.
On average, people across the country are driving a little faster than they used to. And they got into that habit early in the pandemic, we think, because there were fewer cars on the road for a few months.
It is really hard to see. It's been a rough couple of weeks for people who live and work near the intersection of Southeast Powell and 62nd Avenue. Many of them saw the aftermath of a crash that killed a 17-year-old on a motorcycle. They say it was graphic and gut-wrenching. One man who heard the collision reached out to Katu. He didn't want us to reveal his identity, but he wanted to talk about what happened.
That could have been me. It could have been me trying to pull out. And that man died. And it could have been me involved in that situation. And it could have been my kids hurt. It could have been any of us.
Another person told me they ran out to help, but it was too late. All they could do was cover body parts until paramedics arrived. Horrifying to even think about.
Yeah, it was a very, very traumatizing kind of experience.
But not surprising to neighbors like Mike Harden, who's lived about a block away for 28 years.
My wife and I will not take this intersection at all because you cannot see the traffic.
Harden says this is the problem. Tents and tall grass blocking the line of sight for drivers heading north on 62nd, where the car involved in last Saturday's crash would have been pulling out. Portland police investigators say 2 motorcycles were speeding east toward the intersection. The teen who was killed was in the right lane, closest to the camp. Police told us they don't think visibility was a factor in this crash. But if you pull up to this intersection, you can see it's still a problem even 9 days later. The camp hasn't been moved, and it's difficult to see what's coming. Cars, SUVs, even small trucks blocked by those tents.
I don't think there's any way that the Uber driver who was hit in this terrible accident could have really seen what was coming his way until he was in the lanes.
Powell is a high crash corridor. Under Mayor Ted Wheeler's emergency declaration issued in February, people shouldn't be camping here. We reached out to the mayor's office several times to try to get an interview, but they weren't available. We also asked PBOT and ODOT about the grass. PBOT gave us a number and email where residents can report and send photos of vegetation and other obstructions to travel. When I pressed further, asking why they're relying on tips from the public to get the grass mowed, a spokesperson told me, due to various budget cuts over the last 20 years, our green space maintenance crews are stretched pretty thin. We handle brush maintenance on a request basis. ODOT told us they only manage the road from curb to curb.
Yeah, it's like a Spider-Man meme. Everybody's pointing at each other.
Neighbors say they're worried, not just for drivers, but for the people living inches away from speeding traffic. So they will keep reporting it. But after hundreds of complaints just since the end of February, they're not sure it'll do any good.
I'm really frustrated at the inaction of the city and the inaction of the police enforcement. And everybody is trying to point fingers and say it's somebody else's problem. And I want something done. I love my city. And I want it to be a good city.